going to start off with some introductions. I'm Aaron Ferguson, Vice President of Operations for Stone Door Group. I run the Solutions Architecture and Service Delivery teams. I'm very pleased to have Jason Gross with Red Robin today to talk about Ansible on the Edge and disaster recovery and continuity. So Jason, you want to give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Jason Gross, been with Red Robin for 8 years, manage enterprise and cloud architecture. I manage the systems operations team and restaurant operations, essentially infrastructure. That includes all corporate infrastructure and cloud environments.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So Mike McDonough, Senior Solutions Architect with Stone Door Group, and I've been in IT for quite a long time now. I've been with Stone Door Group since about 2017, and I work with Stone Door Group's clients in pre-sales and post-sales service delivery.
Thank you. Today we're talking about automation and how Red Robin uses Ansible automation platform to manage the estate of resources across their multiple stores. I wanted to thank Jason and Red Robin for being a customer and partner, really a partner with Stone Door Group for the last 2 years and continuing that partnership as we go into the further years. Jason, first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Red Robin?
Sure. I've been in IT since before Windows, certified in T4 many moons ago. Started off my career doing consulting work, ended up getting into enterprise. I've been in big enterprise, global enterprise, ended up at Red Robin, and actually the Edge has it's been fun. It's an interesting environment to deal with. You have a different set of things to deal with, and and AEP, as we'll talk about, is help that environment.
Can you tell us a little bit about that threw me off, sorry. Can you tell us a little bit about Red Robin's claim to fame, maybe some business model?
Sure. Red Robin is call fast casual dining. Americana is kind of our claim to fame. That's burgers, shakes. We're known for our bottomless fries and the family-friendly environment. So you can, bring your family there, have a good time, be yourself, and enjoy, good burgers, good sandwiches, drinks, shakes, and bottomless entrees.
Fries, bottomless fries.
Yep.
Can you give us any other information, like number of employees, locations, or number of stores?
Sure, we have 420-ish stores, 30,000 employees. The home office is based here in Colorado in the DTC. About 200 people there. Most of the IT people are remote nowadays. Yes, and we do about $1 billion a year.
I'm going to ask you to disclose one Red Robin secret today. You ready for this?
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite burger?
I like the Royal. It's just a bacon cheeseburger with an egg on top. Close runner-up though is the chicken sandwich. Hand dipped. The new CEO we had, he came in and basically redid the entire menu, the entire restaurant kitchen, and so it's good. So
good.
It's good stuff.
It's the bottomless fries for me. I could go in and make an entire meal out of bottomless fries.
Yep.
All right. Excuse me. Let's get back to work. Can you tell us a little bit about the technologies that Red Robin is currently using across those 420 stores?
Sure. We're currently a VMware customer. We run a 2-node shared storage VMware stack, redundant switching, redundant firewalls. Basically across all 200 stores. That's basically the stack.
What kind of applications are you running on that stack?
So, things have gotten a lot more complicated once, DoorDash and those kind of things, but we run NCR, which is the point of sale system. There's systems that run the kitchen displays. There's systems that run management of customers, where they sit, timings, logistical stuff, food ordering, all that kind of stuff. All that runs at the restaurants.
So it's literally that stack runs an entire restaurant.
Yep, I look at it as 420 mini data centers.
that you don't have to manage manually anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Got it. In IT, when we talk about Ansible automation platform, there's a common misconception that it will only support Red Hat products or Linux. Mike, can you give us a little insight as to what other devices Ansible can support, as well as what constitutes Edge?
Sure. So good to establish the baseline here. So first of all, and I think after a few days of being here at the Red Hat conference, a lot of us most of us have picked this up already. But with Ansible, Windows is a first-class citizen, right? Alongside Linux and various Unix variants. But beyond that, of course, Ansible supports network devices, storage devices, and that certainly comes into play when, as Jason was talking about, the stack they have deployed at each restaurant that has, Windows is really, they're running Windows at the stores, not Linux. They've got VMware, network switches, and all those devices can be managed with Ansible. Your second part of your question was about Edge, and it's a good place. That the term has been thrown around a lot. I mean, just this week, right? Edge. There's been numerous sessions about Edge. But what is Edge? If you look up the textbook definition of Edge, it is the process or methodology approach of bringing compute and storage closer to the users. Well, why would you want to do that? That doesn't really tell us anything, though. Why do we want compute and storage closer to the users? Well, the goal of edge computing ultimately is to enable applications for our users that otherwise wouldn't be practical due to constraints like network bandwidth, latency, the reliability of the connection back to the data center. So I think we need to keep that in mind. And the goal is those applications, those point of sale, in this case, point of sale applications that Red Robin runs. The goal is to have those, in the store, available all the time, when their store is open, so their users, so their customers can order food and the kitchen can be run and DoorDash the deliveries can be carried out and that sort of thing. So, we've defined Edge. We know the goal of Edge is to bring those applications closer to our users. What are some of the characteristics of Edge that's important? Well, one, Edge solutions, when we're looking at it from a solution design perspective, you have to have a low or reasonable capital cost per location. So you can't, deploy, 6 racks of servers at each Red Robin restaurant times 400. It doesn't make the math doesn't work. You've got to have a solution that, in terms of capital cost, is reasonable. It makes sense in terms of the revenue for each of those locations. Then we have to look at the labor side of things. The time it takes to set up a new store, set up those new systems, has to be low, right? So it has to scale, and that's one of the stories or the themes with Edge is that anything we do in an IT perspective has to scale, and that scalability from a labor and effort perspective. Ongoing maintenance is probably more important than the initial setup. Setup's a one-time thing. Ongoing maintenance, management of each location, it has to scale. And the amount of time, effort required to manage each location, it can't be a geometric type curve. It actually needs to go down, right? So as we do, the first store, it's going to take 10 hours a week. Well, the second store can't take another 10 hours. It needs to take 8 hours or, something like that, so that we can, as you go to 400 stores, you don't need an army of IT people. And I think Jason can speak to the size of his staff, but it's a small team that manages those 400 stores.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of, the initial thought around all this. There were, several factors that kind of brought us into the automation space, right? It was tight labor market, right? It's difficult to find operations people. There was, the consistency and the reliability of pushing stuff. In the early years, lots of times we'd have problems. We'd be like, okay, well, what was running there? And, it wasn't clear what was running. And having an automation platform that pushed all of that stuff in a consistent and reliable manner reduced the time to resolution on issues, because we knew that there was consistency across the platform. And Ansible does that very well.
Another aspect that we need to consider with edge is that we're not always going to have a reliable network connection between the edge locations and our main office, our data center, our IT staff. So edge solutions need to be able to run independently, at least for some period of time. And Ansible's a great solution with that. Agentless architecture doesn't require a constant connection between our devices and Ansible automation platform, running in the data center or on the cloud, for that matter. So it's another reason that Ansible automation platform is a good choice for Red Robin.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's pretty simple, right? If the internet goes down, the restaurant has to operate, right? Customers have to be getting their food, orders have to be taken, kitchen has to operate, right? The customer has to not experience an outage if we're having an outage. And so, that necessitates the fact that there is going to be a compute stack at the edge, and that's why, a cloud-only solution for us really isn't viable. It's, we need to be able to run the restaurant when there's no connectivity, there is no cloud. And, that's why I think that, for us, the edge is always going to be there. And, being able to manage it at scale with small labor force and with consistency, Ansible and your help setting all this stuff up it's been great. We went from taking days to solve store problems or maybe reload a store to we can reload the entire company in hours. And in small sets, we can do it in minutes. And then sometimes we look at, the scope of the problem and we're like, it's just faster to reload the store. So, and that's kind of gotten into our DR and our business continuity strategy. And, I'll talk a little bit more later about, where I think AAP fits into the scope of the theme here at Ansible Fest was, mission critical. And I believe that AAP is a mission critical, because if I'm going to recover or restore or deal with an outage, I need that system to do that. And so, in my view, AAP is carved out of, I would say, the traditional stack. It exists with what I call the root infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you. So you made mention that a customer and the staff, excuse me, you don't want them to notice that the system is down or the store is down, right? So that's what's important to the business. How do you measure success on a technical level?
Obviously uptime, the business is going to measure success in revenue, right? The revenue streams need to keep coming in. And to do that from our perspective is, consistency, being able to do deployments that are known, being able to go from, dev and test into production and have confidence that that production deployment is going to be exactly as we, tested it out. So for us, technically, it's the consistency and the force multiplication that system gets us that's really the most powerful part, I believe.
So my next question revolved around the nightmare scenario for Red Robin. So hearing you talk, it doesn't sound like having a store go down is really a nightmare scenario any longer. Is that true?
But I mean, it's a
within
nightmare
reason, right?
scenario if it's across the whole company, and
Yes.
we think about that, and that's what business continuity is about. And we've built the AEP and its associated dependencies in Azure with multi-region and a 4 nines configuration. So if we do have a nightmare scenario, we have the tools to deal with it. Obviously connectivity is a piece, and we have redundancy built into the restaurants themselves. So it would take a leveling of the store to really bring us down. And at that point,
There's a lot more to worry about.
There's a lot more to worry about there. So we just do the best we can for the guest experience, and if as long as they're happy, we're going to be happy.
So let's talk a nightmare scenario, not an actual nightmare scenario, but a store goes down, store goes offline. What, you've mentioned that you don't want the customer to know, you don't want the staff to know. What is IT's response to a store going down, and what kind of steps do you do to bring that store back up online? And let's talk about it in a couple of different ways. Internet connection goes down, or the entire stack gets corrupted and you have to rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an internet problem, the systems are capable of operating independently. Like I was saying before, that's kind of our view of the edge, is that it's like a spaceship out there that you're sending it off, and it's got to be able to operate on its own. So if the internet's down, we know that the systems that are inside there have enough redundancy and are capable of operating for a limited amount of time. Without that, obviously, restoration and of that connectivity is super important, and we've had many strides over the last couple of years of solidifying, redundancy in that. If the store itself gets corrupted, and this happens, we have a lot of resiliency built in the VMware stack, but there's also the possibility of malicious activity and things that are human based, and we have log aggregations and systems and SOCs to kind of take a look at that, and at that point that would be a great thing where Ansible will be like, hey, we're closing off some gates here, we see some anomalies here, we're going to isolate this, and then we look at it and be like, you know what, we're going to reload it, right? Just wipe it off, reload it, and and we've gotten to that point now to where we can, have that discussion where, okay, we can reload the restaurants, and we talk about it, and it's, there's still a little bit of scare factor, like, okay, you're going to reload the whole company, right? But it's possible, and we could do it in, in a few hour window. So, and that's, that's because of AAP, and that's, and it's because of, our relationship with you guys.
And we engaged with you a little over 2 years ago, right, to solve some very specific problems in the title of this session. Can you talk a little bit about those use cases that we engaged to solve, and how, are we there?
Yeah, I mean, you're never always to the end. I mean, there's always, and from where we started with AAP to where we are now and where we're headed, we were crawling, and in the crawl, walk, run model, we're still walking, but now that the operations and the DevOps teams are familiar with Ansible and they're able to do this kind of stuff, we're getting now to the point where we're like, okay, when I talk about how breaking into root infrastructure, your public DNS, your namespace, your vaulting, that stuff you must control, and then you throw AAP on there, that gives me my must control items with the system that I can use to spread out reconfigurations or rebuilds. So, I've changed in my understanding of how I'm going to use Ansible, because it's now part of the root, right? I can lose things like vCenter, and I can lose some, and I'm willing to walk away from some level of the systems in a catastrophic event. What I can't lose is AAP.
So we often have these conversations going and talking about very specific use cases, and that evolves, and it like turns into this almost a monster where everybody's like, I want to automate everything I possibly can. So I know that we've started out with, excuse me, some very specific use cases, and that's evolved and continuing to evolve.
Yeah, when we decided on, we knew automation was coming. We had to. We just didn't have the resources to do stuff without it. We started looking at what was out there, the Puppet, the Shout, just all that, what was out there, and Ansible, to what you hear a lot in the conference, is about the accessibility of people that aren't programmers, aren't Linux admins, right? I've got people running playbooks that they don't know anything about it, right? And so the use case is, so when we made that decision, basically everything from that point forward is, when we looked at the firewalls, we're like, okay, show me all the firewalls, and let's start looking at the Ansible modules. So we've been doing that process now for every single thing going forward. Is like, okay, it has to work with our root infrastructure, and that includes AAP. What are the modules it has? What is the relationship between this vendor and Red Hat? And when we make big decisions, we bring in Red Hat, and we bring in the vendors with you guys. Hey, I want to know whether or not all this stuff plays together. I want to know what the relationship is here, because I don't want to be the middleman. And everything we do has to be working in AAP. So, what is the relationship? And there has been vendors, I'm like, you're not mature enough in the automation space, and this is how we do things now. So
and we look at it like you're not a customer of ours. We look at it like we're a partner. We are basically an extension of Red Robin.
Right.
So I know we've when we first engage, we go through the implementation phase. We do a handover. We do some training, but we also we have learning subscriptions. So can you tell me a little bit about how the learning subscriptions have helped enable you and your team?
Yeah, we had a bunch of distros. We had, FreeBSD, CentOS. We had it all, and that's just because the nature of different groups doing their different things with what they're comfortable with. But once we decided that AEP was going to be our automation engine, then it made sense at that point that if I'm going to collapse my vendors, that RAL was going to be our Linux distro. So to that end, we have basically removed all of the other distros, and we've put them all on RAL. And the learning subscriptions have helped. We're a Windows shop, to the point earlier about Ansible does Linux and Windows. Our point of sale systems are Windows systems. So our teams are Windows centric. We're a Windows corporate. So the learning subscriptions and all of that helps the systems teams and the DevOps teams understand what it is in the Red Hat ecosystem. And I believe that that's an important thing that we just bake into the cost of dealing with a Red Hat ecosystem. Once you're in an ecosystem, you also have to have its training. I mean, you can't be relying on Google to bring yourself up to speed on this. You need legitimate training from the vendors that you've selected.
How important is the agentless architecture for Red Robin? I can go either way. We run a lot of agents, right? We've got antivirus, user behavioral, we've got Splunk, and there's a lot of agents already. Security, it seems like every 6 months they want an agent added onto the stack. So I do like the agentless aspect of it. I do like the fact that Microsoft, I can come in on WinRM, I can now come in on OpenSSH, I can come in on with the Red Hat systems, straight through these native pieces of the operating system without first putting something that doesn't exist in that system in there so I can manage it. So I do love the agentless piece. And then, we also brought in HashiCorp Vault as the mechanism, because I think it's important that with AEP, that the authentication system that it's using isn't the authentication system that corporate uses or the restaurant uses, right? Because if I'm going to have this root infrastructure and I'm going to shoot out all of this rebuild, right? I can't be relying on the authentication system I'm looking to rebuild, right? So that was an important piece, was understanding that the automation platform needs its own security identity, right? And that's part of what I call that root bubble. So how has Ansible helped you and Red Robin for a work-life balance?
This one kind of hits home for me. I had some health problems in the last couple of years, and I've got a different look out on life. And I thought about how if you get to the point to where you have this consistency and this reliability that that you feel comfortable in doing these really large things across, we have 30,000 employees, right? Do things that impact every single one of them. You have to be comfortable in that. And then once you're comfortable in that, you can extract some of your life from that screen time so you can enjoy what's important in life, your people, your friends, your family. And so I actually feel like AAP can help a team's work-life balance by extracting them from minutia and complication and in the weeds and stuff, and you look at some of the AI pieces that are coming on board, hey, maybe these guys don't need to know all the ins and outs of writing a playbook. Is that really the most important thing? No, just, hey, the system can help us build playbooks. What's important is the people that run these playbooks understand what they're gonna do, and we're really moving the operations and the DevOps teams up a level to more decisions, right? That's what their value is they know what to do and what not to do. Is it really writing a playbook, right? So, I believe that, Ansible and, the stuff that Red Hat's doing is going to make it so, we can get some of our life back, because IT will kill you if you let it.
And it lets your team spend time on more important tasks. Right?
Well, innovation,
Absolutely.
Right? Research, the stuff that we all want to do, right? We all want to see what's cool, what's around the corner. If we're, in ops and in development doing, kind of this day-to-day stuff, you can't move that fast.
Which leads to my next question, which I know you can probably talk hours on, but we don't have that much time. What's next for Red Robin?
We're in a refresh phase. We're getting, I see what's coming down the road. We all see it here. It's in constant display. And, there's a lot of things that you got to get in place to be able to do that. You talk about AI power and circuits and hardware and prep for all of that. We understand that, and we're refreshing with that capability in mind. And I believe that our ops is probably a couple years in front of the business, and that's really a good spot to be, is to be in front of your business. Now, that makes difficult conversations to justify, some things that they're like, why do we need that? And I'm like, well, you will need it. We're in that phase, but we're well positioned. We got a web leaf for our website. We're doing this refresh. We got this automation, right? You hear in the conference a lot about, you can't really do the AI without the automation piece. So this really is a foundation to build on. So you have to have that piece. You have to have that piece in there. And then you got to be comfortable with it. I mean, you can't start building on top of the foundation if you're not sure that the foundation is solid. So that's where we're positioned, and I think that the uniqueness of the edge keeps the senior guys happy. We have long tenures. Like I said, I've been there for 8 years. There's nobody on operations that's been there less than 5 years. That's also right. We know how hard the talent pool is. Have things that keep people interested. Have the technology vision to be like, hey, this is going to be interesting down here, and your guys will be like, that is going to be interesting down there. So, keep them interested. It's that's very important.
Great. Well, that was the end of my prepared questions, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions to both of you. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to talk about?
I think, for me, it was, that work-life balance. I wanted to get out the idea of the this root concept and where AAP sits in that, and to really think about insurmountable barriers, right? You know, we're under constant attack, right? We're a tier one credit card taker, so you know, there's constantly a pack of wolves on us, right? So part of, and I had the fortunate time span to be the one to kind of build some of this. So I was able to take the, you know, the concepts and the learnings from what the reality is, and we see it in the vulnerability stuff, and we see how fast that, you know, that stuff's coming. As like, you know, can you win? Are you going to win that battle? I mean, not always. So how do you protect yourself, and how do you protect logical systems? You do that in a namespace, right? You break things out in the namespace, right? Your corporate is in its own namespace. Your revenue streams are in its own namespace. Your admins have their own namespace, right? So they can't upstream, they can't cross over. You're building these, you know, these insurmountable barriers or valleys that are very difficult to cross. Right. And I think that's an important concept. I mean, we hear a lot about zero trust, and you know how, you know, to me, when IT marketing starts latching onto a name, they're usually a few years behind, and most of people are already in there kind of figuring out that they need this kind of isolation, because, you know, these root systems that don't have any access, right, that's what I got to keep the wolves away. The rest of it, I can use AAP and just, you know, build it and go.
Great, thank you. Mike, same question.
Yeah, I would say, you know, as I worked with Red Robin, and I've worked with some other retail customers that are at different points in their journey in terms of IT modernization. I mean, one of the themes that I've come across is that, you know, actually my background is in the enterprise space, you know, going back to Sun Microsystems, the .com days and that sort of stuff. But, you know, one of the things we can do as architects and as, you know, anyone creating solutions, doing design work, is to look at the patterns we already have that have been successful, and apply those to the edge, you know, specifically. Now, not everything is appropriate for a large data center is appropriate, you know, for a retail store. But there are certainly things, I think, working with Red Robin, going the configuration as code approach with Ansible, with AAP, you know, so making this enabling their DR instance to its configuration to stay in sync with production. It's a great example of, you know, a practice that is, you know, pretty commonplace in the enterprise space, but maybe not so much, especially in the, you know, small mid-market retail space, where people are used to more just kind of doing things ad hoc and whatnot. So I encourage you all to kind of, you know, try to think outside the box. I know that's a overused phrase, but you know, look at the patterns of your experience and apply those appropriately. You know, what makes sense when you're working in an edge use case.
Great, thank you very much. I wanted to leave some time for Q&A, so this is the Q&A session. Yes, sir.
Started out is that one of the things that I'm in backup and recovery myself, and doing it for 30 years. One of the things that is coming into fruition right now is essentially cyber attack and ransomware, and especially with the bad guys going after the backup environment. And how do you, disaster recovery is in two different areas. One is the Katrina type of disaster, the other is actually a hack coming in,
right.
Ransomware or something like that. What is it, MGM Grand is a good example that comes through an ATM machine. How, if your headquarters or whatever data center is hacked and is down, how fast could you back up?
We could go pretty fast. I'm a big fan of the Cohesity platform, and when I talk about, you know, breaking out root kind of stuff into isolated, you know, namespaces, I do the same thing with the backup systems. And I air gap and I ship, and, you know, right in the same way how I was saying that, you know, with Ansible, you know, I believe that it's important that it has its own authentication system. Same thing with your backup systems, right? Because that's where they're going to go. They're going to go to your authentication system. They're going to try to get access to that backup system through all the standard things. They're going to see, can I get into the security guys? Who's got access into the backup system, right? The systems guys, right? So extract the authentication outside of the corporate realm, per se, into, I tell our auditors, you're going to have to get a handful of guys in a room and you're going to have to torture them because you're going to have their presence. That's the only way to get access to that. So, and then, with Ansible on the restaurant side, right, we're not doing a lot of big data stuff down there. And so we do have the freedom that if we did detect some anomalies on a site, that's where we would be like, you know what, we have enough time, we'll just reload it, right? And, reload it, take a look at it. We still have some anomalies. Are they outside of that system? We don't allow east, or, we're a PCI regulated, environment. We don't allow, east west. We don't, everything is hub and spoke. There is no intercommunications with anything. And so, we have and we've been a Splunk customer for a long time, and Splunk has been very valuable in the detection of anomalies. So, we rely on, and to that point, log analytics is king, right? You must have that, and you feed those into your log aggregators, and you spend time in there, seeing, how to determine whether or not, first baseline, so you know what to expect. What is your baseline, right? Because if you got a baseline going and then all of a sudden, right, you got to expect, you don't really have to even know what it is. What you know is that it's an anomaly, right? And if you know that you have an anomaly, now you can start, and this is a great use case for AEP. It's like, okay, I detect an anomaly here. Kick off to ServiceNow. Kick off some workflows, and maybe that's locking down some doors, maybe that's killing some services, maybe that's getting a little deeper into, some of the processing pieces, and then we'll make a judgment.
How long has that been in place, would you say?
I wouldn't say specifically, but long enough.
The reason why I'm saying is that you've got, in my 30 years experience, you've got a resilient system that goes far above 90% of the companies out there.
Well,
So,
I know that I got the wolves behind me, and I've been doing this since before the internet. So, I've got my perspectives.
that's why I came here. I just wanted to see what you were doing.
Great. Yep. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, when you say you reload a machine, are you reinstalling the OS or are you using images?
We can go all the way to bare metal. We're a Dell shop, and we do have attestations of the hardware that exists at the store, so we can determine whether or not the hardware itself has been manipulated. And we can go all the way from basically new box shipped from Dell to working application, and in an individual restaurant in less than an hour.
So Jason, would that include starting vSphere, your VMware stack
Yep.
on top of those
Yep.
boxes in the virtual machines?
I don't know if it's going to be vSphere forever.
Maybe open to virtualization.
I mean, it's been some sessions that I've been in. I'm definitely interested in it.
I'm just kind of curious, how do you deal with cooling in the restaurants? Do you have like dedicated rooms?
No, that's kind of, and that's a great point about the edge is, it's not traditional, locations, right? We had some pictures of some systems of ours, long before I was there, where somebody picked up the box and the bottom of the box stayed on the floor because they've been mopped around it so much that it rusted the case. Now, we do have racks, and we do have environmental controls, and we do have monitoring on that. obviously current hardware is really, capable of running into the extremes. It's not really the extreme environment that the hardware has a problem with. It's more the managers like, why is that, what is it doing? It's so loud. So, it's more the humans' interaction with the hardware than where it is. Because we've had stores, and we've been around for a long time. I think Red Robins were opened in the late 60s. So some of our sites are pretty old, and we do the best that we can with what we got.
Great.
One other question. Are you thinking about going into any container environments?
In use cases where it makes sense, unfortunately, our point of sale is not container friendly. So, and that was one of the things about the early, I've been watching the OpenShift for a long time, and that was one of the questions. And with the Stone Door guys, it's like, hey, I want to know about the specifics of, do I have to run headless? I need some traditional, access with VMs that, we get with VMware. And so, that's something that these guys have helped me, and, their relationship with Red Hat has helped kind of flush out some of that stuff. So, I'm like, okay, yep, that's on the list of considerations. So, yep.
Anything's possible. Any other questions?
With enough money.
Sure.
What does your edge systems look like? Does the server with you 8 bits, or you have microservers going on there? And how are you monitoring your edge devices?
If you're saying what kind of hardware it is,
So I'm asking, what does it look like? Just a single server with you?
no, it's a VMware stack. So right now it's the latest Dell XR4000s, which is essentially a 2U chassis that you can put blades in. We have redundant switching. We use software vSAN storage in there for redundancy. We try to make it as, we're an enterprise. We try to make it as enterprise as we can, but we are retail. We're not, an AI company. So, our budgets are tight. Our margins are tight. So we have to, really consider, some things. And I think we do a pretty good job with what our budget is, but it's about as close as I could get to an enterprise stack as I can get. Monitoring, obviously AAP can give us facts and data, and we can dump that in. We do like Zabbix. We were a SolarWinds shop, but they scared us, so we don't do that. The hardware itself, with Dell specifically, they have a really good, way of monitoring. We're knee deep in with Dell and their systems, and it does a really good job too. So it's a combination of several things. And like I said, the log analytics. As long as I can get logs out of stuff, I can use Splunk too to figure stuff out.
We probably have time for one more question before they kick us out, but we'll stick around for a few minutes after.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you refresh your store, are you pushing all your images just over the internet? Is it fast enough to get?
That has been something that has been recent for us. We've been a backhaul generally, but we partnered with Fortinet to give us a little more capability, because in a PCI environment we have to have certain controls on the stuff, on the ability to go over the internet. But we've got some of that stuff in place now, and we've had a project, like I was saying, to prepare for the future. Circuits were definitely one of that. So now we do have the capability of coming in, and it did seem like there's some services that are getting a little more robust in the kind of the artifact places, but we could just keep our local artifacts on our local software storage. So as long as we have the base systems in there, we're just pushing configuration changes, and then when we have a big change or a big OS, right, we'll pre-populate all those artifactories.
Great. Thank you all for attending. Mike, Jason, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll stick around. If they kick us out, we'll be right outside the door if you want to come up and ask some questions. Thank you.